Voting is the cornerstone of democracy, and yet a recent survey of 1,000 voters in low turnout areas in the region showed only a quarter of them knew there was an election next month. Vince Vasquez is the senior policy analyst with the National University System Institute for Policy Research. He joins me now. Vince, only 27% of voters showed up at the polls for the June primary. You expect turnout to be higher in November. Why?
Right. So typically, when you make a transition from a primary to a general election, you have a lot more contests on the ballot. You have a longer amount of time where voters can begin to study the issues and study the candidates. And I think that's what's happened here in San Diego. We also had in the summer an issue with voter fatigue from the 2 or 3 special elections that we had in the city of San Diego. So I think now voters have had more time to think about the issues and the candidates, and there's a lot more candidates and a lot more campaigns who are knocking on doors, trying to contact voters, trying to get their votes, and that certainly has an impact on voting.
Now, there are 2 former San Diego City Councilmen who are facing off in the 52nd Congressional District race. That's between Democrat Scott Peters, he's the incumbent, and Republican Carl DeMaio, former San Diego City Councilman. How tight is this race?
So most political experts and most of the pollsters who've been following this race have called it too close to call. It's really a toss-up, and the reason being is that it's a place of changing demographics, and we've looked at the past 2 years where the Republican registration edge in the district has actually been cut in half. It's fewer Republicans now than there were 2 years ago. There's also slightly more Democratic voters than there were at that time. We also expect for a late surge in that district as well, and that typically tends to be more decline to state voters and more Democrats than there are more new Republicans that are being registered.
So who do you think will benefit, given the fact that there were people in the northern coastal regions who voted for former San Diego City Councilman Carl DeMaio in the 2012 mayoral race?
Right. So we did an analysis and we looked at this issue of these new or casual voters that are going to be showing up. Folks who either skipped the June election or they weren't registered at the time. And there could be potentially up to 45,000 of those voters. And many of them are in the northern city coastal communities in places like Del Mar Mesa, Torrey Highlands, La Jolla, Pacific Beach. They voted strongly for Carl DeMaio when he ran for mayor overall, looking at those precincts, but Scott Peters actually did best in those areas when he ran for Congress, as well as when he ran in the June primary. So it's an issue of voter psychology. Do voters see a mayoral race differently than a congressional race? Do the qualities that they're looking for in those candidates in those separate races different? Do they differentiate? And I think it remains to be seen what happens, and clearly we'll have to wait until Election Day to find out that result.
So what effect do you expect that race, the race for the 52nd Congressional District, to have on the 6th district race for the San Diego City Council? That's between Democrat Carol Kim and Republican Chris Cate.
Right. So the interesting thing is that the District 6 boundaries completely overlap with the Congressional District in the 52nd. So there's going to be a higher turnout rate in the 52nd because there's millions of dollars right now being spent on TV ads and mailers and get out the vote. And that's going to have a bump in the turnout for District 6. That's generally going to be more Democratic voters and more decline to state voters. And we had looked at by precinct where those areas are of these new and casual voters that we're expecting to show up anyway. And they're actually in precincts where Chris Cate won the majority or more than the majority of the votes in June. So we expect for Chris actually to do well with those new voters who will be showing up in November. So
there's a mayoral race in the city of Escondido between incumbent Sam Abed and challenger Olga Diaz. Now, traditionally, statewide, Latinos they just simply haven't flexed their political muscle at the polls as they could. Do you expect that to be different in the city of Escondido, given its history on immigration issues?
I think there's more of a motivated Latino electorate now than there ever has been in Escondido, and I think it's something that acutely affects them on the local level. Olga has been somebody who clearly obviously from the Latino community, but also somebody who champions those issues from the community. And irrespective of who wins in this race, we expect for the city races to get only more competitive. And you're going to see shift in terms of partisan registration from Republican to more Democratic and more declined to state, and also with more Latino voters. And you can look at the level of Latino voter registration in National City, where you have about 48% or so Democratic voters, but about 60% of those voters there are Latinos. And I think at some point we're going to see similar effects in Escondido.
Vince Vasquez, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.